Welcome to MensNet. We're glad you're with us. My name is Mel Feit. I'll be hosting today's show. Tony Nazzaro is our executive producer. All right, over the years, I have heard from thousands of men going through difficult divorce, and a typical call will go something like this. The man will say, you got to help me, please. Things are really bad here in Florida, or things are really bad here in Texas, or things are really bad here in Oregon, in Michigan. Things are bad in New York. And of course, all these men are right. Things are bad in New York and in 49 other states. Occasionally I'll hear from a man who is more aware, and he will say, I know it's not a local problem. I understand that the system is broken and that the system has to be repaired. And this view that the system is broken is, I think, the prevalent view among fathers' rights activists. Well, I don't think the system is broken. I think it's working almost flawlessly. I think it's doing exactly what it was designed to do. Not that people went into a room somewhere and calculated, how can we make a system really bad for fathers and children? I don't think that's what happened. I think what happened was that over time, the system evolved to accomplish a particular difficult task, namely, how do you profess to embrace contemporary values that say that women are as strong, as smart, as powerful, as capable as men are, and at the same time enforce 1950s style values that say that when there's a divorce, the court has to step in and protect the woman, at least require her ex-husband to continue to provide for her because, we can't expect her to make it on her own. She's a woman. How do you profess to believe one thing and then do the opposite and somehow make sense of all that? The large problem, I think, is that our society is kind of trapped. I think we're still stuck between the world of men and women that was and the world that is coming to be. It's like if you have two tectonic plates moving past each other beneath the surface of the earth. If you happen to live on top of that fault line, you are likely to experience incredible destruction. Well, every courthouse in America sits on top of a cultural fault line. And should you find yourself in a family court, you might experience incredible personal destruction. But the fault is not within the institution. It's not in the court. The fault lies in a deeper, unresolved cultural conflict. The court has simply invented mechanisms to cope with it, like the false accusation, which gets a man out of the house, but not because he's a man. It's because he's an abuser. You have a 1950s-style result, 21st century values, perfectly combined. Nothing is broken, which begs the question, if it's not broken, how do you fix it? Can you fix something that's not broken? And that's the question for today's MensNet. Joining us to have this important discussion is Maria Rauch. Maria is the president of the Mid-Hudson Valley chapter of the New York Fathers' Rights Association. Maria has spent a lot of her life and her time helping fathers, and she joins us for the third time on MensNet, so you're part of our MensNet family. Nice to see you again.
Nice to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
And also on our show is Lloyd Rosen. Lloyd is a matrimonial attorney with the firm of Wisselman, Harunian and Associates, which I think is the best matrimonial firm in the New York City area. And on this show, we have had Wisselman, we have had Harunian, and now we're going after the Associates. Welcome, Lloyd. Nice to have you.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me as well.
And also on our panel is Beverly Willett. Beverly is an attorney and an author and an activist. She is the co-founder and vice chair of the Coalition for Divorce Reform, and I think you're going to find that she has some really interesting things to say about reforming the system. I am so happy that you're on our panel. Thank you for joining me. Okay, I want to start with Lloyd.
Okay.
Tell me the one most important thing you know about how the whole system is screwed up.
Well, it's interesting because in your introduction you touched upon what I believe to be the biggest problem, and coincidentally it was what I was in court for the majority of the day today. And it has to do with the issue of family offense proceedings, particularly under Article 8 of the Family Court Act. And it is a gender-neutral law the way it is written, but the way it is applied by the courts and applied by the attorneys is not typically gender neutral. It tends to favor the women as far as providing the quote-unquote protection and blaming the men and actually holding the men as guilty requiring them to prove themselves innocent.
So, and how, and what percentage of these accusations would you say are in fact false?
Well, I can't speak of precise percentages because you never know when somebody's telling the truth or not. You have suspicions that someone is not telling the entire truth, if not subtly telling the truth. But I would say that in too many cases, the protective orders are being used for a litigation tactic rather than for true defense and protection of the recipient of that order.
And the interesting thing about this is that you're in a system, the court is supposed to be a place where people go to find the truth. I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. And yet my sense is that in fact oftentimes there are lies that drive the system. Would you agree with that?
Well, your premise is false in that the court's goal is not to determine the truth, because if it was, there would be other methods to determine the truth. The purpose of the court is to determine who sounds more like they're telling the truth. That's what the trial is about. Yeah. Because you can have two people testify, and the decision of the court is going to be based on who sounds more like they're telling the truth.
Well, then it's a game.
You're right.
It has nothing to do with the truth.
Absolutely.
All right. So let me ask you this question, put you a little on the spot. Hypothetical question. A man comes into your office, says, Mr. Rosen, I'm afraid that my marriage is falling apart. I think my wife is making threats. She's saying she's going to take my children away from me. She's going to call the cops and have me thrown out of my home, okay? Now, you and I would know at that point this man is in a dangerous place. He might be the target of a false accusation. Now, I'm assuming you're going to give him this advice. Tell me if you think I'm right or wrong. I think you're going to say to him, go out now, call the police, accuse your wife of something, and embellish the facts. Is that the advice you're going to give to him?
Absolutely not. I would never advise a client, male or female, to make false accusations, to allege something that did not occur, to lie about anything, because truth and the perception of truth is the ultimate need in a court proceeding.
Yeah, okay. But here's the problem I have with that. If the court is kind of driven by false accusations, or some of them are false, and we don't really care what's true, we care about who makes a better impression, if that's the game, and you know it, and you don't tell your client to defend himself by making the first accusation, he's going to be on the losing end of protracted litigation. They set up that game, Lloyd. Mm-hmm. They set up the game where they don't really care what's true or false, and I don't know, why wouldn't you tell your client to play that game?
Well, I can't say there aren't attorneys who do operate that way, and I've experienced attorneys who do operate that way and advise their clients the way you suggested. I do not. I believe that would be systematic destruction of the legal system, and I think it would contribute to the core problems we have with the legal system.
Okay, let me ask you just one other question before we get to Beverly. You're Judge Rosen now, and a woman walks in and gave you a little bit of a promotion. Talk show hosts can do that.
Okay.
So, you're Judge Rosen, and a woman walks into the court and says, Your Honor, my husband has made threats, and I'm afraid of what he's going to do, and I need an order of protection to protect myself and the children. Now, you know that accusation might be false. It might be true. You have no idea. What are you going to do, Your Honor?
Well, as a judge, I would have no choice but to assume the person, the woman in this case, is telling the truth, and I would have to act to protect her. Err on the side of caution is the phrase you hear very often in court, because judges are elected and they do not want to have their picture on the cover of a newspaper when they deny an order of protection and then the person is hurt or threatened or maimed the following day.
I don't know that I would want to appear before Judge Rosen then if I were representing a man who was accused. I mean, it's a difficult issue. Yeah.
I'm not saying the man wouldn't be entitled to his day in court and to be heard and to prove whether or not his wife or ex or girlfriend or whatever the case may be was telling the truth. What I'm saying is if somebody comes to a judge and alleges that they've been threatened, that they've been harassed, that they are fearful for the acts or statements of somebody else, they need to err on the side of caution. They need to offer some protective measure. The problem with the system is that that protective measure is often dragged out
for years, indefinitely, and that's the problem.
Because of the backlog in the court system.
Okay. Let me just move on to Beverly here.
Sure.
Beverly, the one thing that you know, the most important thing that you understand about how the whole system is screwed up.
Well, I would say that from my perspective and the divorce reform work that I'm doing is let's not get into the system at all. Let's try and figure out how we can avoid getting into the system. Because what I hear now is we're in this system that is so bad and there's so many things that are wrong with it. We seem to be going around in